Welcome back to my single sketch challenge that I've done with the Snips by Kelly group and the Snapshots. And here's my sketches for a one-page layout and a card sketch. These are in the annual catalog on pages 28 and 24. That's where we got these sketches. So the first thing I'm going to do is gut a piece of early espresso cardstock. I am leaving a 1-inch border around the whole thing, and I realized later that I probably should not have either gutted this or I should have done some stamping beforehand, but I did make it work. I'm also taking some basic white cardstock and cutting it down to 11 by 11, and that will give me a border around the whole thing and it'll look just fine. So actually it was 11 and a half by 11 and a half. And then I'm cutting down some of my scraps of the early espresso from the inside to 5 1/4 by 7 1/4. And I'm going to cut down this piece from Weekend Adventures, the DSP. I am cutting it down to 6 by 10. And then I will find the middle at 3 inches and just go up about 1.5 inches so that I can make my dovetail. And I'll just take my scissors to finish off that dovetail piece. So I have some pictures, which you're going to see in a minute, that are from a recent vacation we took with our kids. And we rented some electric bikes and we spent several hours taking turns on these bikes. And so I liked this picture from when we picked up the bikes, and I had it print into a 5 by 7. I have a few other pictures and I'll put those on a companion page as well. And so I'm getting my frame ready here, and I'll just add some adhesive around to it. And I did not know that I was going to stamp the title on or some other things on this page until I got it all together. And when I was thinking about how I wanted to embellish it, I really just wanted to stamp a few simple things on it and let the pictures really be the focus of the whole layout. So I am putting this banner piece down 2 inches from the left-hand side, and I did put it all the way up to the top on that early espresso frame. So it started at the very top. And then I will take this photo and put it down. I started to do it about 2 inches from the top. And then when I was looking at it, I was like, nah, I think I want it a little bit higher. And the sketch shows maybe something in that top right hand corner of the photo. And I have a picture. Actually, I have a sticker, and it says Geneva, which is the name of the town we were at, Geneva on the lake. But the greens just weren't the right color of greens. So I decided not to use that on here because it just did not coordinate with the greens in the photo, the greens on the DSP. And so that's when I went looking through my stamps, and I found this one that's Weekend Adventures stamp set, and it says adventure starts here. And it definitely was an adventure because we biked miles and miles through the town, out into the country on the roads. We biked through some trails, and so that was perfect. I also brought in a stamp from Peaceful Pier, and this one happens to be a cling stamp. So when I put it on my large Misty, I needed to take out a sheet of that foam that I had in there because the cling stamps has some foam already in them. And so here's my little hack. I took one of my scraps and I laid it inside that frame to even it back out so that I could still stamp and the layers were not uneven. And it was perfect to stamp that way. And so then I brought in some of my Stampin' Rights, and I have the Old Olive, Mossy Meadow, and Early Espresso. And I just used the brush end of those Stampin' Rights to color in this stamp with the trees. And I did the old olive first, and then I went in with my I went in with my mossy meadow. I did use the other end for my early espresso just to get very specifically into some spots, but I think the brush end really helps cover it the best. And I did go back in and add a little bit more of the old olive after I was finished just to make sure it would show up. But I usually like to go in with my lightest color first and then go in with my darker one, and just kind of build up my colors that way. So this day was spent, and it was very hot and humid at home, but since we were right on Lake Erie, it wasn't quite as hot. Don't know if you saw that. I just kind of huffed on the ink once I got all of that marker down just to refresh it, and look, it stamped out perfect the first time. So just a little bit of huffing on there is what will bring that and rejuvenate that marker for you to stamp off an impression. So it was pretty warm. It was very sunny. It had rained the night before, but I noticed that on the lake it is not nearly as hot. It is not nearly as humid as what it was back home. So we really enjoyed that. I'm using another little stamp that has like tufts of grass on it, and I think I am coloring that with the mossy meadow as well. And I'm just going to stamp that a couple times across the bottom of my layout right there by the trees. And then I have this little stamp from the Frosted Forest stamp set, and I'm using basic gray Stampin' Right to color that in and stamp a couple of birds up at the top of this page. And I will probably stamp another bird on the other layout that goes with this, just to kind of tie the two layouts together. So now I'm flipping that little extra piece across the bottom so I can stamp my title at the bottom and have it be on an even layer as well. And this title says Adventure Starts Here. And when I go to pick up that stamp, it's not picking up very well. And I realize since this one is a photopolymer stamp, I need to add in that piece of foam so that I get a better stamped impression. So we add that back in, then I'm able to pick up my stamp just fine, and I'll be ready to stamp that title. And so this title I'm going to stamp in the early Espresso Stampin' Pad, and that really matches the frame that's around the outside and the matting that I have on my pictures, and so that should be just perfect. So we really enjoyed going on these electric bikes. My husband and I actually rented them last year. We had so much fun. We decided to rent some again this year. And so I think we rented them for about 3 hours. And so we had lots of time to take turns and just go out around the little town and see all the different houses out along the lake. They were absolutely beautiful. And just to kind of explore the town and go through the state forest and enjoy some of the trails there as well. So there's one other little stamp in this Weekend Adventures stamp set that I liked. And it looks like it could be used for ink splatters, it could be used for dirt, it could be used for things like that. And we definitely had fun on these trails that were in the woods. And so I thought this kind of represented, how messy the bikes looked. They looked like they needed a good hosing down after we were finished. So I'm taking my early espresso ink and stamping off just to lighten it up and turning my stamp every which way and stamping this around that title and just giving it a little bit more character. And you can see that it just gives a soft effect to it, and it doesn't really interfere with reading the title at all. So we'll clean that off good, and I'll show you the companion page that I made for this layout as well. So here's the other one, and I got both of my kids with their spouses, and then another picture of some more people taking other turns on the bikes. So my husband actually stayed back and just helped babysit all the grandkids, and then the rest of us kind of took turns watching the kids when we were not biking that day. So let's bring in the sketch, and I see this card. And so what I'm going to do is bring in my mini die cutting and embossing machines, and I'm going to cut some trees out of Frosted Forest. I'm taking the trees out of that die set, and I'm going to put them through. So you can lower these or layer these trees so that you can have some like cutouts with on the inside. And so I cut two that were textured like that with the two dies, and then I cut two more out of the, I believe it was the old olive cardstock, and I cut two more that just had the outline. And so that will give me 4 trees. I can put some on the front and some on the inside of my card. And I thought that it kind of looked like some of them could use a little bit more of something. And so I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending with my blending brushes just to give it a little bit more color and depth of color. So I'm going to bring in my paper. I'm actually going to just use that as my scrap paper, and I will bring in my blending brushes, and I can use that on those trees that have a little bit of the extra die cuts on the front. And then I'm going to also bring in my card and make a little bit more of some blending on the front of the card as well. So all of the pieces that I am using on this particular card are just scraps from that one piece of DSP and the cardstocks that I used on the layout. I did not cut anything extra. I just used the card base and then all scraps after that. So I layered a couple scrap pieces on the inside, and I'm blending a little bit of that old olive on the front of the card. And then in the early espresso, I'm going to stamp my sentiment. And this one is from the Frosted Forest stamp set. It says, "No beauty shines brighter than that of a good heart." So I'm just going to set that there, let that soak into the paper a little bit, and I will get ready to layer these on. So the DSP that I'm layering on the front is 2x3. The early espresso that I will cut for the front will be 2¼ by 3¼ and then I brought in that same little bird from the Frosted Forest stamp set, and I decided to stamp that in Balmy Blue, and then I will just layer these pieces together. So this little card came together really fast, and I like these sketches because it gives me kind of a jumping off point that I know what I want to do for a card, and it gives me some inspiration. And then I'm using the dimensionals to make sure I pop up the pine tree that's on the front. I put just the plain outline pine tree on the back, and then I will layer on the one that has the ink blending and more of the cutouts on the front. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the inside, only I am not going to pop up the second tree on the inside. And so after I finished this, I was like, you know what, I think I need just a little bit more of something on the front. So I'm going to go bring in some of my natural tones linen thread. And I pull these different colors out all the time. It's like the perfect set to be able to dress something up. And so I'm going to pull that through so that I can wrap it around the front of the card a couple of times and just tie it off on a knot. And it just gives it a little something extra, but it won't cost me anything extra when I send it through the mail. That's important because so many times I have to put 2 stamps on a card instead of 1, which is fine, but the postage just keeps going up and up and up. And so if I can make my card so that I only have to put 1 stamp on it, that's a real bonus for me. And I also put a lot of cards in mailboxes at church or sometimes in mailboxes at work or things like that. So you might have some other options, especially for those overly embellished options or 3D items that you create. Maybe consider if you have some other places, or you can always just hand it with a gift or something like that. So here's a final look at my card, and I hope you enjoyed this little sketch. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more crafty inspiration.